Awesome. Okay. Yeah, so welcome and thank you to everyone who has turned up today. I can't believe how many people have tuned in. This is very humbling to see the incredible show of support for everyone in this space this session. Um, I guess we can just kick straight off and do some introductions from each of our speakers. It shouldn't take too long. Oh wait, I'm just bringing the Arbitrum account up. Yeah, let's get into it and do introductions. Who wants to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. My name is Fish. I'm the co-founder of Trader Joe. And yeah, we're super excited to announce that we'll be expanding to Arbitrum, which is a massive, massive moment for us. We started off as a humble fork with a vision to innovate on the frontiers of DeFi. And for those who don't know, we spent most of the year building an entirely new and innovative AMM, pushed from scratch called the Liquidity Book. And now that the Liquidity Book has launched, it's time for us to go to cross-chain. So Arbitrum is our first step, and we're super excited to welcome the Arbitrum community.
Hey, I'll go next. Yeah, really great to be here. Thanks for having me, and thanks so much for everyone who came in to listen. I'm Steven. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Offchain Labs. Offchain Labs is the company that's building Arbitrum. Arbitrum is the leading layer 2 scaling solution on Ethereum. I'm sure we'll get into that more, but I'll get a bit more about my personal background. I got into the crypto space in about 2013 as a PhD student at Princeton University, and I worked together actually with two of my would-be co-founders. That's Ed Felton and Harry Kolodner, who are my co-founders at Offchain Labs. Arbitrum was a research project that turned into a company, turned into something much larger, and we're super excited for where we are today, and really excited to, we've been following the progress of Trader Joe for a while, and lots of the innovation that you're doing, and excited to have you guys coming to Arbitrum as well as your community, which we're super excited about, and happy to be here today to tell you more about Arbitrum and see how we together can work together and build something even larger.
We just got Murloc who's joining us as well. Just while he connects, I'll introduce myself. So my name is Blue. I'm the marketing and community lead for Trader Joe, and I've worked with the Trader Joe team, Fish and Murloc, going back to August 2021. We just had Murloc join us as well. Hello, Murloc. Are you able to speak?
Hello.
Do you just want to quickly introduce yourself?
Hey, folks. I'm Murloc. I am a co-founder of Trader Joe. I take care of product development and partnerships.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, let's kind of go straight into it, Stephen. Do you perhaps want to give us more of a kind of a deep dive into what Arbitrum actually is, what it enables and enhances on top of Ethereum?
Absolutely. So Arbitrum is, we say, a layer 2 or a scaling platform. So let me dive into what these things mean a little bit. There are different, in a layer 1 blockchain, there are three basic things that you want, which is decentralization, security, and scalability. And different layer 1 blockchains take different approaches and different trade-offs to this. But in Ethereum, they put a very, very heavy emphasis on decentralization and security. And those are closely related, and they basically give up scalability at the base layer for that. And that's why you see, certainly in times of congestion, very high fees, relatively limited capacity. And there are different ways to solve this. One is to maybe give up some of that decentralization or give up some of that security, but that's not the Ethereum approach. Ethereum approach is that these are the core most important things, but of course, the product needs to scale as well, right? We can be philosophical and say, oh, decentralization and security are the most important, but if nobody can use this, right? If it's impossible to use and doesn't actually meet any real world use cases, either because there isn't enough capacity to just meet the demand, or because the fees are so high that it just doesn't become price effective to use, then it's not really going to be doing anything, even if it's philosophically very good and values based, very decentralized and secure. So you really need all three of these things. And the Ethereum community recognizes this. But their approach to scaling is what's called layer 2 platforms. And a layer 2 is a blockchain that's built on top of another blockchain. And you may have heard the term rollup. Rollup is a particular type of layer 2, and I'll tell you how all rollups work very, very briefly. I won't get into the difference between Arbitrum and others right now, but the way all rollups work is they take all the transaction data. So you send the transaction to Arbitrum or any other rollup, they post that on Ethereum. So all the data is on Ethereum. And it turns out then the only thing we're arguing about, the only thing we need to figure out, I should say, is the execution. So what happens when you take these blob of transactions and execute them? What is the state? And the way that rollups do that is they take that execution off-chain. So Arbitrum validators, not Ethereum itself, will do that execution. But remember, we want the security and the decentralization of Ethereum. That's what we want. So how do we get that? And the way is, in one word, is proofs. We prove back to Ethereum what we did off-chain. So now Ethereum, I'll say magically, but I'm happy to go into more how that works. Via this proving system, Ethereum is able to validate even that which is not directly running. So we can do, and in this way, we can go get a lot more of our mileage out of Ethereum than putting everything on chain, right? Ethereum has limited capacity to put everything on chain, but if we use Ethereum's capacity differently, more compactly, instead of using Ethereum's capacity to execute every transaction and actually run all those transactions, instead we use it to put the data on chain. We take the execution off chain, we're able to scale. And the magical part is we're able to actually do that while Ethereum is validating, and Ethereum is actually proving the correctness. So what you end up with is, in these three properties, you get the security and decentralization from Ethereum, and you get scalability from Arbitrum, because Arbitrum doesn't have its own validators. Arbitrum relies fully on Ethereum consensus, so it immediately inherits that security and that decentralization. But because it's using Ethereum much more compactly and only putting the bare necessary amount on Ethereum that it needs to convince Ethereum that what it's doing off-chain is correct, it's able to get a lot more and do a lot more. In practice today, Arbitrum chain has capacity about seven times that of Ethereum. And it's super, super exciting. It's also much, much lower cost as well. The other thing that Arbitrum does is it gives you an overall better user experience, because it gives you near instant confirmations. And you tried out Arbitrum, you might see you press the button and you get that confirmation. You press confirm and you basically see the confirmation relatively instantly. So that's what Arbitrum is doing from a technical perspective. And just I'll go back for one more second. You go back in history. If you look on YouTube for the very first mention of Arbitrum, you'll find a class project video from the fall 2014 semester at Princeton. And this actually predates my involvement in the project. Ed Felton, my co-founder, who had started the project, was leading this project at the time. And the reason I like to mention that is because Arbitrum, that's actually predates the launch of Ethereum. We've been thinking about scaling smart contracts literally before there was a smart contract platform, not Ethereum, not Avalanche, really not any other smart contract platform. And, later on, as Ethereum progressed, we applied those principles and we said, okay, we're building on Ethereum, we're building layer 2 in Ethereum. From the first days in the company, we were always Ethereum focused, but we basically have been thinking about these problems for a long time. And today we're fortunate to have been live. We're live on mainnet for about a year and a quarter, and things are going fantastically well. And besides all the technology, the other really important and exciting thing about Arbitrum is the community. We are leading in just about every metric: transaction volume, TVL, etc. However metric you like. Arbitrum, the number of dApps deployed. And the nice thing about it, it's a very welcoming and very open community. We don't, we roll out the carpet for everyone. We want to work together with everyone, and it's really that friendliness that I think really defines our community. So, we are super excited to have the Trader Joe community expanding to Arbitrum as well, and excited to work with you all.
Wow. So yeah, really great information and insight shared there. I want to touch on one key comment actually, which I'm kind of keen to perhaps explore. I love the fact that you commented on you were thinking about scaling smart contracts before smart contracts were even live in 2014. Like, how did you have that kind of vision back then in all those many years ago?
So remember, we came from this from an academic viewpoint, right? So in the academic communities, they were like, Bitcoin was live. We were first focusing on Bitcoin. Then there were papers about smart contracts, like the Ethereum white paper, for example. Predated Ethereum by some time. There was a particular paper actually called the Verifier's Dilemma, which actually pointed to some of the scaling issues. I think this was a 2012 or 2013 paper. So we were academics at the time, and a lot of people were pointing at again, even though there was no commercialized smart contract platform, there was plenty of white papers and academic papers discussing these things, and so we were very much intrigued by this. And I guess I should dig a little more into the academic background where we come from. So I mentioned myself, Ed, and Harry. So me and my two co-founders all met at Princeton. So Ed was a longtime professor at Princeton for 28 years, and also has done some other really interesting roles. So he was the chief technology officer of the Federal Trade Commission. He was a deputy CTO of the White House under the last 2 years of the Obama administration, and came back to Princeton. Actually, that's when I got involved. When he came back in 2017, and we picked up the project again. But some other academic projects that just to give you some more academic flavor of the things we were interested in that we worked on. So Ed and I actually wrote together with some others at Princeton and elsewhere, co-authored the leading textbook on cryptocurrencies. And other academic work that I did was around multi-party computation. That was a lot of my PhD work, and these threshold signature protocols that have become popular today from companies like Fireblocks. And also, I did a postdoc at Cornell Tech, which, among other work I'm proud of, was a co-author on the Flash Boys paper, which, if you're familiar, was a paper that defined the term MEV, or minor extractable value. So anyway, that's a little bit of a detour into the academic background, but this is all an academic pursuit. Really, it wasn't until 2018 where the company founded where we had any commercial interest in this. But how did that come about? We worked in these ideas academically, and then they were very exciting. And we said, hey, we actually want to build this out. We think there's a ton of potential here, and we want to see this project through. And so that's where we are today, 4 or 5 years later.
That's very interesting. And I just want to dig more into perhaps, Arbitrum and like the value proposition that it offers in this market. So you've kind of touched on those kind of key high level value props for Arbitrum, and the scaling solution it provides for Ethereum. But why do you think that Arbitrum has grown into this dominant position within this kind of L2 scaling solution market at the moment?
So I think it's two things. The honest answer is I can't say for sure. We do a lot of things, but that we think are important. But I think it's fundamentally two things. Number one is the technology. So Arbitrum, paved the way for optimistic rollup technology. Our interactive fraud proofs, which is the way that we do these magical proofs that prove back to Ethereum. We innovated those, and it actually took years for other teams to come around to our approach. Today, any team building an optimistic rollup is building on Arbitrum's interactive fraud proof design, but that took a long time, and we had, and even today, actually, Arbitrum is the only roll-up that actually is fully built out. The only general purpose roll-up, I should say. There are roll-ups like for specific value transfer, but the only general purpose roll-up that actually has these proofs built out today is Arbitrum, and I think that's important. And the other thing is like EVM compatibility, or EVM equivalence, or that is the idea that a rollup should run the Ethereum virtual machine natively. That today it's like obvious. You have all these teams. That's like the floor that everyone's reaching for. But if you go back 2 years, it wasn't obvious at all, and nobody actually, other than us, was going for this. Some teams were going for completely different languages support. Other teams were going for something that was like trying for something that was similar to the EVM and mostly compatible, but had its own compiler. So we think saw this early, and the reason why that mattered is when we launched, it basically was just really, really easy for people to launch on Arbitrum, because all their contracts, all their knowledge that they built up, if they're developers, just worked and applied. So that's one thing. The technology, I think, we are much further ahead than just about any rollup project, and that's why we're here in the first place. And I think a lot of people appreciate that. But the second point is also the community. And I'll go back to Arbitrum's launch on mainnet and to tell you how we approached this, which I think was actually unique among other projects. We did something called the fair launch strategy, which means different things in different contexts. But for us, what it meant was we launched our contracts on mainnet, the Arbitrum rollup on mainnet, in May of 2021. But we waited 3 months. It was the last day of August 2021 when we opened that to the public. And in the interim, there were some projects that had, and during that time, we opened up for developers widely. So we had hundreds of projects that we onboarded, but it was whitelisted. Your average user couldn't show up. It was only for developers. And the analogy I like to give is, imagine you're building an amusement park, and imagine that rides are built by third parties. You let the people to build in the rides before you let the the patrons in before you let the people that are actually going to ride those rides. So that's what we did. But we gave this long 3-month period to get everyone on the same footing, and we didn't roll out the red carpet for anyone. So the idea was, for example, on day one when we launched, there were multiple projects in many categories. Even the AMM category, there were multiple projects that went live. There was Uniswap, there was SushiSwap, there was Swapper, and the idea being that we said we wanted to be fair to everyone. We want to be open to everyone. We're going to give everyone the equal support. And if you're winning on layer 1 on Ethereum, you might win on layer 2. You know how to execute, you very well may be, but it's not going to be because we're the gatekeeper. And that comes from our values, which is it's a decentralized system. The point is to remove lots of barriers to entry for many people. The point isn't to replace those and ourselves become the gatekeepers. And that's something which started from our launch, but has really been core to our values, this welcome, friendly, open access. And even in Arbitrum, you'll see, and I think you'll experience, there's always a friendliness. Projects want to work together, help each other out. It's really a very friendly and open and not very competitive space. I think that's key to our success. And again, I'm sort of patting ourselves in the back here, but at this point, it's well beyond us, right? It's not ourselves perpetuating this. It's a way that the community was built, the opening and the welcome community. And and at some point, it becomes a bit of a snowball effect, right? People want to be where other DeFi projects are. They might not care about those original values that brought those other projects in the first place, but maybe they just want to be near GMX, for example, or Dopex, or et cetera, or Trader Joe when you guys launch soon. And I think that's helps it as well. So in sum, to sum up my relatively long answer, it's basically I think the technology is far and ahead others, but also the community is just absolutely fantastic. And we are at this point. I just I'm very fortunate to be part of such an amazing community, and I hope that you will come and experience the same thing that I am, and I'm pretty sure that you will.
Yeah, I can certainly attest to that as well. There's some really great kind of communities that have been built on in the ecosystem, and that I'm personally very fond of. So yeah, 100% agree on that. Maybe this is a good point to kind of turn over perhaps to Fish or Murloc. Why are we deploying Liquidity Book, EAMM onto Arbitrum? What were the key reasons?
Yeah, I'll take this one. We see Arbitrum like ourselves. We're both young, nascents, with a focus on community, especially retail. It also seems to be the place for, quote unquote, DeFi or degens, which is completely aligns with our ethos and philosophy. Trader Joe was very much well known as the meme dex, a place for degens, and people love to do DeFi on Arbitrum as well. You have great products there like GMX, Dopex, which you've already mentioned as well. We also have like great relationships with those existing projects, right? GMX and Dopex especially, they're already on Avalanche, and yeah, I mean, for us, it just felt like the synergies were there. It was obvious, and that's what ultimately led us to deploy there. Also, fun fact, we mentioned Dopex, but like some of our team members used to be part of the Dopex community as well. We had Halko, our first quant. He was also on the Dopex team. So, for us, like it feels like new waters, but I feel like we already know a lot of those projects on Arbitrum that doesn't feel so unfamiliar for us anymore.
I did not know that. Super interesting. The Dopex part.
Yeah, I think Blue, you also came from Dopex, right? Or you were there at least.
Yeah, Dopex was actually like the first, I guess, community I really joined in DeFi. Before many months ago, middle of sort of 2021, and I just remember joining that server and just really enjoying like the community that had been built up there. Everything like kind of pivoted around this Diamond Pepe, which I thought was just hilarious.
Yeah, it's an incredible community.
I think Hero, who also works on our NFT business development, also hails from Dopex. But yeah, like Fish said, we looked around at all the different chains, and then we couldn't really believe that they were all Ethereum, because some of them look quite different from others. But Arbitrum looked most familiar. We looked at it as we know a lot of names over here. It felt closest, to what we knew best, and there was a very strong DeFi focus. At least from that was our impression.
Yeah, Stephen, maybe over to you actually. Why do you think a liquidity book would be a good fit for the Arbitrum ecosystem?
Yeah, I think what Fish said just now, which is there is a very strong focus on DeFi. What I see is Arbitrum is basically leading in, I'll say, in DeFi innovation, right? So there's DeFi on many chains, or one of the leaders, I should say, in DeFi innovation, right? That's where, but like you have a lot of innovative DeFi and protocols you mentioned, like GMX and Dopex, but also things like Umami and Vesta, Mycelium. There's a lot of very important DeFi innovation happening on Arbitrum, and I think the community will appreciate what you guys have to offer and all the thought that you put into Liquidity Book, and probably appreciate some of the comparisons and differences for how it compares to, say, the concentrated liquidity on Uniswap V3. And I think that you'll actually find a very engaged community where your differences and will shine, and you'll be able to very much find people that will appreciate these fine differences and be, one of the things I'll tell you from my experience building a roll up is you always get better from your competitors. At least that's what I feel like. In some sense, like you say, oh, I wish we had no competitors, but then really you don't, because really everyone's pushing each other in the right direction. So I think that, I think that you'll find a lot of really engaged DeFi enthusiasts and also builders that will help you build, continue the amazing work you've done. Obviously, you've done fantastic work as already, and seen extreme success. But I think you'll continue to see that in Arbitrum and have an appreciation for the technology as well.
I think this is a good point, actually, to shoot over to perhaps Fish or Murloc. So for those listening who may not be aware of, what the Liquidity Book AMM is and, what it provides users with in terms of the new experiences, for traders, liquidity providers, and also builders. Fish or Murloc, do you just want to kind of touch on the key features that it introduces for DeFi?
Yeah, sure. In a one-line sentence, the Liquidity Book is the biggest leap of AMM innovation since Uniswap V3. That's like our marketing tagline. But to go into more detail, it is a concentrated liquidity AMM using a constant sum price formula instead of a constant product formula. And it has some new innovations. Mainly, we have a dynamic fee component. So fees are not fixed anymore to like 0.3%, 0.05%. They are variable and they are dependent on volatility. So we actually have a built-in volatility oracle that measures, price movements and transaction frequency, and basically the fee incurred by the swap will go up during high volatility. Because the idea is that if you're providing liquidity, you actually suffer more impermanent loss during high times of volatility, and that's bad for LPs. And we combat this through, a dynamic fee component. So TLDR is like you will have low slippage because of how liquidity is concentrated, but for LPs, you'll also get compensated for IL during volatility, which we think is a win-win for both.
Yeah, great. And then in terms of, on the builder side as well, the value prop for Liquidity Book is, fungible token receipts. So what we're seeing already on the Avalanche side for the Liquidity Book AMM is, there's a number of projects that are currently building, strategies to kind of layer on top of Liquidity Book. And, we expect this to also happen on Arbitrum, either with, existing builders here on Avalanche that look to also deploy on Arbitrum, but also, it's open to new builders on Arbitrum as well. If they want to come and build on top of the Liquidity Book AMM, it's very friendly, facilitating to make that happen. Cool. So maybe something else that we could touch on, which has caught my eye a lot over the last few months. Stephen, Arbitrum Odyssey can you kind of like give a high level overview of what this kind of program is? I'm aware it's paused at the moment, but maybe there's some additional I don't know, insight or information for users who haven't heard of Arbitrum Odyssey before. Is this going to open up again at some point? And just generally, what is Arbitrum Odyssey?
Yeah, great question. So let me. I'll first start with the second part. Yes, it will open up at some point relatively soon, and we are also planning. This is probably something I'm announcing for the first time. We're also planning multiple seasons of this, so there will be opportunities for more projects to get involved that weren't in the first cohort as well. And the way that this worked basically is, well, let me actually back up. What is Arbitrum Odyssey? What are we trying to do? And what we're trying to do is basically introduce people to the many, many apps and experiences on Arbitrum. And so what we did was we opened this up. This is back several months ago. So we opened this up to, I think, 50 or 60 projects, so maybe 56 projects, I think rings a bell. And we had the community vote on which projects they wanted to see. So they were grouped into like groups of 4, and the community voted on which ones they wanted to see in the Odyssey. And then the idea is that for each week, there will be 2 projects, and they'll each define these tasks. And basically, you do these tasks, and you can get an NFT, a custom NFT designed by Ratwell, the well-known NFT artist, for each of these weeks. And then if you collect them all, you get something at the end as well, another NFT. So that is basically what the Odyssey is, really an educational experience, which was aimed at bringing many people to the ecosystem and allowing them to experience what's cool about Arbitrum. So maybe it's the first time they've used it, and they'll see, wow, these transactions are really fast, or wow, these costs are much, much lower than I expected, or wow, I didn't know that there was a protocol where you can do X, Y, Z. And actually, so before we paused it, one of the first weeks was, I think the first week actually, one of the projects was GMX, and I've had so many people tell me since then, and you see some of these publicly on Twitter and on Discord as well, statements of the forum. I tried GMX because the Odyssey. I came because I wanted to participate in the Odyssey, but I've never left. And that's like a massive success case. That's what we're trying to do, is educate and excite people and bring them to the ecosystem and show them what the ecosystem is, what the projects are there. And from that perspective, I'm very excited about it. I think it's been fantastically successful. We did pause it. We paused it actually back. So now I'm going to go into a bit technical Arbitrum history. On August 31st of this year, on our 1-year anniversary of our mainnet launch, we did a massive upgrade called the Arbitrum Nitro upgrade. And in doing so, we increased our capacity by about 7 to 10x. Odyssey was initially launched before that happened. Odyssey was initially launched before the upgrade in the spring, I believe, of this year, and going into summer was the plan. But the problem was it was a bit of a victim of its own success. It was so successful and so popular that so many different projects, so many different users were coming to participate in the Odyssey. And what happened was that the fees basically went up significantly. Remember, this was when we were running at 1/7 or even less, maybe 1/10 of the capacity we're running today. So that's basically, and what happens. So what happens in any system, and every single blockchain system out there has some capacity. And in our case, back then, it was roughly the same capacity as Ethereum. And what happens is the fees go up, right? There's a limited resource, so either you reject transactions or the fees go up. So the fees started going up, and it came to the point where those users who were just using Arbitrum were having really, really high fees, just because all the Odyssey users. And it was a very short-lived problem, because we knew that we knew personally we were about to maximally increase the capacity for Arbitrum very soon. So we decided, okay, we're going to pause this and wait until we did the Nitro upgrade. So at this point, we have done the Nitro upgrade. There are a bunch of really exciting announcements that we wanted to do in different places, and we've done a few of those. For example, our acquisition of Prismatic Labs, and some other upcoming very exciting announcements that we're doing, which has defining when the Odyssey will be restarted. But we will be restarting the Odyssey shortly, and at this point, we're very excited to restart it, because we have about roughly 7 to 10x the capacity we had last time, which means, by the way, that we can handle 7 to 10x the traffic that we got, and the fees still won't go up, right? Again, if we have 1,000 times the traffic or 100 times the traffic as last time, sure, the fees will go up again, but we can handle a much, much larger surge, and the Odyssey will return shortly. And it's for those listening that might be interested in participating. It should be a very fun experience, but the focus is really on education, right? So users will be introduced to different parts of the ecosystem, and hopefully they'll try them out, get excited about them, use them again, and say, hey, while I'm here, let me try to use some other projects. And we've seen a lot of that even from the first week that we launched. I think in the remaining 6 or 7 weeks, there will be a lot more of that. And again, the projects for the first season was already chosen, but this is not something that's one in time. One point in time. We're planning on doing this repeat cycles again. So even those projects that weren't involved or maybe weren't yet on Arbitrum when we did the initial voting will have an opportunity to take place in the Odyssey. And I would, personally love to see Trader Joe in the Arbitrum Odyssey Season 2.
Awesome, 100%. I absolutely love questing. I think it's a really fantastic way to encourage protocol discovery, and especially these quests with multiple steps in. It's just really good for community integration and growth as well. So, excited to know that Arbitrum Odyssey is coming back. Looking forward to that. Interesting to touch on perhaps Arbitrum Nitro. You mentioned this was an increased capacity of 7 to 10x over the previous iteration of Arbitrum. Can Arbitrum Nitro be scaled or upgraded further from that?
In short, the answer is yes, absolutely. So Arbitrum Nitro did a few really interesting things. Number one is it reduced. Remember, I said before that all Arbitrum transactions are posted on Ethereum, right? So that's what we had left, right? We take all the execution off, but we still need to post all the transaction data on Ethereum. One thing that Arbitrum Nitro did was massively increase our capacity and our ability to compress transactions. So we were able to take the same transaction and squeeze it much, much smaller, which means two things. One, you're using less Ethereum data to post the same transaction, so the fees go down, but also you have more space and more capacity to post other transactions. So in a world where, we're not there yet, but in a world where the entire Ethereum capacity was taken up by rollups, Arbitrum's, by doing much better compression, we make room for even more transactions and even more scalability. That was one thing. The other thing we did was, and this is a big technical, we changed our node architecture. We used to have a fully custom built node. It was always EVM compatible, but if you look under the hood, it was a completely different node than Ethereum uses or say Avalanche uses. It wasn't built in the Geth code base. Again, it was fully compatible at the surface, but if you pick up the hood, the insides were different. With Arbitrum Nitro, we built our rollup with the same nodes. Even if you pick up the hood and look at the wires, it actually looks very, very familiar. And for many users, this won't matter. But the two things that actually changed were, one, for tools that actually look under the hood, tools like that use the internals like tracing and different support provided by Geth. They would be fully supported now, and also the gas accounting became exactly the same as Ethereum. So any operation in Arbitrum, the layer 2 gas will match exactly the Ethereum gas, which is a pretty big, pretty good for lots of projects, and some of them that hard code these numbers, and then that will be as compatible as possible with Ethereum. So that's basically what happened. So on those metrics, so how can we do better, and can we do better? So the answer is yes, we can do better. We can further increase our compression. Another thing which we're working on simultaneously as the Ethereum community is something called EIP 4844 and data sharding. And these come at a slightly different way, but both looking at that piece of that data that we put on Ethereum. Compression says let's use less data. These proposals say let's make the data we use cheaper. Right? It doesn't increase the capacity, but they'll make them much, much cheaper to post that data. And in practice, both of these will work together to give you a cheap, reliable, high throughput experience. And the other thing that's going to come soon, and I think people don't really appreciate, and maybe I'm leaking some alpha here today, but EVM compatibility, EVM equivalents are massively important and something that we believe are critical, and will always support that fully. However, there's a lot more that rollups can do to innovate, to say, hey, how can we improve this experience in Arbitrum? So EVM equivalence, EVM compatibility will always be there, but how can we make it even better? How can we supplement the EVM in ways that maybe Ethereum wants to do, but we can do more quickly on a rollup, right? We can innovate first on a rollup and give other developers an even better experience for onboarding, other users an even better experience. And this is something which, to say it succinctly, I think EVM equivalence is the floor, not the ceiling, right? And we're going to do a lot more to make that experience even better. Again, never at the expense of EVM. ADM will always be there, but there'll be a lot of other affordances that we can do, and we can make this experience even better. I think we can innovate a lot more quickly on layer 2 than some others. So the same way we had Nitro, we're building that up. We're building these similar capacities internally today, and I'm super excited for those. I think those are going to change the playing field a lot, and a lot of those will go directly to your question. Some of them will go to developer experience. Some of them will go to further reducing costs significantly for doing certain operations and using certain libraries, etc. on Arbitrum. So the answer is yes, we can actually do better. When we launched Arbitrum initially on mainnet, we were 12 people. I don't think people don't realize that, but we were a very small team. A year later, we launched Arbitrum Nitro, and we are now about 70 people. And my point only being is, we're not patting ourselves on the back and saying, okay, we did it, we finished, we're done. We're building up our team, and part of that is a massive research team or a very large research team that we're growing over time. I should say a research team is getting larger over time. Research and engineering teams that are growing very, very much. And the idea is, we are looking to how to increase the scaling, reduce the cost, increase the capacity, make the developer experience better. So Nitro is definitely not the end of our story. We have some exciting projects that will roll out early next year, but also we're looking to the long view on this. 1, 2, 5, 10 years, and that's part of our research team. Our engineering team has a 1 or 2 year focus. Our research team can have a 5 or 10 year focus, and are all looking at how do we make the fees lower, the bandwidth higher, sustainably over time, and even as the demand grows. Because I'm sure some people might get deterred by the market. I'm not personally. I'm positive, and I don't know when. I don't have a crystal ball here, but I'm positive that in due time, the market and it will return. The excitement will only continue to go up, and that's why we'll be ready for that. And we're constantly thinking about how we increase our capacity and make a better experience, not at the short term only, but also in the medium and long term.
Hey, Stephen. I love how you mentioned Nitro and also how you guys developed that to lower fees, increase capacity, and so on. I also noticed that Arbitrum, I mean, I might be wrong here, but I think Arbitrum might be the only chain with 2 chains, right? There's Arbitrum 1 and there's Arbitrum Nitro. Do you think that Nitro or a newer chain becomes, do you guys just continue iterating and developing newer and faster and cheaper chains and replace them? Or do you think there's a future where there are, people like to talk about application-specific chains or application-specific roll-ups? Nitro is often referred to, for being great for games and NFTs, for example. What are your thoughts on, on this as you, look for like a longer horizon, like 2-3 years out? Like, is there just one single general purpose fast and cheap chain, or are roll-ups also application specific?
Great question. So first, for those listening, let me just clarify some terminology here. And to be fair, this is something which I think we've been somewhat confusing about. So so we do have 2 chains which we haven't talked about. So thank you for bringing that up. So Arbitrum 1 is our main roll-up chain. And then we have a second chain called, actually it's Arbitrum Nova, which is a second chain that's its focus is social and gaming. So what is Arbitrum Nitro? Because it's confusing. Arbitrum Nitro is the name of our software stack, and actually at this point, both Arbitrum 1 and Arbitrum Nova run the Nitro stack. So just to review, because I know it's confusing. So Arbitrum Nitro powers Arbitrum 1 and powers Arbitrum Nova. And as it happens, as I mentioned before, for the first year of its existence, Arbitrum 1 did not run the Nitro stack. Right? Arbitrum 1 ran on what we call now the classic stack. And in August 31st of this year, what we did was we upgraded Arbitrum 1 to Arbitrum, the Nitro stack. And to use an analogy again, you can imagine the Arbitrum 1 plane was flying for a year, and we in midair swapped the engine to the Nitro engine. At the same time, or a few weeks earlier, actually, also in August though of this year, we launched the Nova blockchain, and that chain from the outset was running the Nitro stack again. So we launched a Nova chain, was always running the new code. We took the Arbitrum 1 chain and we swapped out the engine. But now today they're both running on this much improved stack. But so 2 things to focus on. One is our goal, at least, or my belief, and the thing that I'll always push, is that we will always push, and propose the best technology for Arbitrum One and Arbitrum Nova. Right? We're not going to, like, as we develop new technology. At least my opinion, and what I'll advocate for, is that this technology should go in the existing chains, and the existing chains will always be running the best technology. And by the way, this is a question I get all the time. Not to go too far off the rails here, but people say, like, what's your opinion on this other technology or ZK technology? And I always say, uh, the ZK technology is not ready today. If you compare the apples to apples or oranges to oranges, the apples to apples are what's ready today, and what's ready today is Arbitrum. The Arbitrum Nitro stack is indisputably the best roll-up stack today. Maybe in a year or 2 or 5, there will be others that are ready. I don't know when. Maybe ZK technology will mature, and at that point, the same way we upgraded the Arbitrum Nitro stack. And by the way, in doing so, a lot of that innovation that we built at Princeton, we retired. There was something called the AVM, or the Arbitrum Virtual Machine, and we were happy to sunset that. And similarly, as our research team builds, whether it's ZK or something else, I can tell you for sure, in a year or 2 or 3, we will have much better innovations. It doesn't matter, what you're looking at today. Everything will innovate and improve. And our commitment is, over at Offchain Labs, is that we will constantly, make this better and continue to improve it, or continue to suggest improvements and to the community. And but we will advocate for those improvements. We're continuing very strongly to work on this technology, and definitely over time it will change. So anyway, but to answer the second part of your question of app chains and how do those play a part, I do think that there is a world for app chains, particularly where the idea is an application will launch its own blockchain. I don't think the case is as strong as a lot of people think, and let me tell you why. The reason is, I think a lot of people underestimate the difficulty it is to launch and bootstrap an ecosystem, right? So launching a blockchain is not just taking the core technology and setting it up and running it, but it's also, you need a lot of the infrastructure. For example, you need something like Trader Joe, right? So a DEX to an AMM to be live, but you also need things like Chainlink, or maybe doesn't matter. You may not use Chainlink's price feeds, but many in the ecosystem do. But you need something like Etherscan, or Arbiscan in our case, but it's a block explorer built by the Etherscan team. You need node providers like Alchemy or Infura or QuickNode, and I can go down the list. Or you need wallet providers, etc. And I'll stop here. My point being is, it's an uphill battle to get all the infrastructure you need, and it's not just, oh, look, we launched our chain, because if you do that without the infrastructure, it's going to be, for many users, a second-rate experience. Users might not have a familiar block explorer. Developers might not have a familiar developer platform. Users may not have a familiar DeFi apps or what be it, and even for many apps, even if they're not DeFi directly, they'll often want some basic DeFi apps. They'll definitely want some basic infrastructure. So I'm not bearish on it as a whole, but I think there will be 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 applications that might be able to pull this off. But I don't think it will be the hundreds that we're looking at today, or fundamentally, these infrastructure providers, I don't think that they're going to commoditize to the point where they just provide these services on, you want to launch a blockchain. Someone will provide these services, but it won't be the top tier infrastructure. I think that's a limitation. And the second point is, there are lots of reasons, to want your own app chain, but for many applications, you often want to be with other projects. Like the liquidity, that's important. Like shared liquidity amongst projects, right? Just being on the same chain is something that's crucial. And in DeFi, more than ever, you have synchronous calls are very, very important, and the ability to take a flash loan and do some trade, etc. Is part of what we do and part of the innovation. And when you have multiple chains, you fragment that experience. So all that being said, I do think there may be communities where it makes sense for, right? So you might have, someone might have a community where we're big enough where we'll be able to get the infrastructure we need. We don't need these interactions with other projects, but for many reasons, I think for many protocols and many applications, it actually makes sense to be on the same chain. Now, that doesn't mean that I think that there will be only one chain. So my personal view, again, take this with a grain of salt, it's just my personal view, but my personal view is we'll see industry-wide chains or vertical-wide chains. And that's actually basically what we're doing with Arbitrum Nova and Arbitrum One. Arbitrum Nova is focused on gaming and social, and it's built on not only roll-up technology, but on our AnyTrust technology, which means it uses a data availability committee. It's a highly secure but not quite roll-up technology. And people always ask me, But in doing so, it has a trade-off where the fees are lower. People say, "Are you competing with yourself? Like, what are you doing?" And the answer is no, we're not. Like, DeFi is on Arbitrum One. The home of DeFi is on Arbitrum One, and we're not planning on changing that. We're not, and we don't think it makes sense to change that. And the community hasn't shown any interest in the DeFi community of moving to Arbitrum Nova. So then, what is Nova? And the answer is basically, it goes back to something I said right in the beginning of this call, where we can like stand high in values and philosophy all day long, but ultimately we have to provide for the application that we want. And gaming is a good example of that. A low fee for DeFi may not be a low fee for gaming, right? If you're doing a DeFi trade, you're trading, $10 or $100, so a fee of 1 or 2 or 3 cents, that might be just fine for you. But if you're a game developer, where every time your user does a game interaction, they have to pay 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 cents, that may be like terrible and impossible and just ruins your game. Remember, games are supposed to be fun, and for many users, draining their wallet is just not fun. And that's okay. And so we can stand on philosophy and say, no, if you're a true believer, you will launch on Arbitrum One, you'll launch on the full roll-up, and you'll just eat those fees. But it doesn't actually meet the real-world demand. And that's why actually we're seeing so much of this innovation in Arbitrum, right? There are so many projects that are just not possible to do on Ethereum, right? The reason why we didn't see gaming on Ethereum was not because, in my opinion, the fundamental technology has changed, but the value proposition has changed. There are now lower-cost chains that actually make sense to game, and you can build these experiences that are economically reasonable and sustainable to do. And that's why we built Arbitrum Nova. It's focused on social and gaming. These developers weren't going to Arbitrum One. They were going to go to other ecosystems, which had, frankly, worse security. And they were going to go there because for the fees. And to stand there on our principle and say, no, you should be on Arbitrum One wasn't the right thing to do. What we did do was, hey, can we provide you an alternative that's much more secure than these alternatives you're going to go to? And that's what we did with Arbitrum Nova. It's a highly secure chain, significantly more secure than an alternative, the alternatives that others were going to, in our estimation. And that's what we provided to them. And I think we're going to see, my personal guess is, whether they're branded, certain app chains or not, we're going to see more of this as time develops, right? Different verticals will have their own chains. I think some exceptional projects might have their own chains, but I personally think that despite all of the activity we're seeing today, my guess would be that we won't have hundreds of app chains in the future. We'll have, or hundreds of successful app chains, I should say. We'll have a handful, but really around different focuses. So, and that makes sense, right? Because if you're a DeFi project, you might say, hey, I don't want to pay the cost of co-locating with gaming, right? I don't want to eat up at the same capacity pool at gaming projects, etc. But you do want to be co-located with DeFi, and it doesn't mean that you'll never want to go over the boundary. You probably will. There always will be bridges and ways to move over, but I think there will be concentrated chains where, if you're mostly a DeFi person, you can leave your money there. If you're mostly a gaming person, you can leave your funds and your tokens there and move over only when it makes sense. But if they're organized correctly, and of course self-organized, but the incentives will be to self-organize. Right? If you're a gaming developer, you're not going to want to go in the DeFi chain. You're going to want to go in the gaming chain. I think that will ultimately lead to a good user experience. And my guess is that's how this plays out. But again, my guess is as good as yours. So this is just one person's thoughts.
Yeah, so to summarize, Arbitrum One is the DeFi chain, and Arbitrum Nova is the social and gaming chain. And for those who don't know, the blue heart is Arbitrum One, is it? And then the orange one is Arbitrum Nova.
Yes, that's correct.
I have a few questions for you, Stephen. So I'll just reel them off. What do you think? And then we'll go on to audience questions. So my first question to you is, what do you think Arbitrum is missing as of now, if anything?
That's a great question, a really great question. So I'll tell you, I'll give you the cop-out answer, and then I'll try to answer the question. The cop-out answer is, what we think when we build Arbitrum, when I go internally and say, what can we build? I think we build things that don't really focus on applications, right? They focus more on the things that all applications want. And I'll give you an example. You might be a game or a DeFi project or an NFT project or a social network, and you all want lower fees, and they all want also fast experience, better user experience, right? No one's ever come to me and said, hey, these fees are just way too low. Can we just put them up a little bit? This is we can't do this. And no one's ever come and said, hey, guys, Arbitrum is just way too fast. Can you slow it down a little bit? And so fundamentally, everyone wants the same things. And that's good for us, because there are a lot of people that are much smarter than me that are thinking about applications here. And I'll be honest, if you would have asked me 2 or 3 years ago, like, hey, well, will DeFi be what it is today? I probably would have said like no, or definitely wouldn't have guessed it if you wouldn't have given me the choice. And similarly with NFTs, and probably similarly with gaming, and similarly for the thing that's going to happen next year that I don't even know yet, right? I don't know what's going to come next. I'm sure it will come. Like I have met, we do see a lot of adoption in like classic fintech and others, but I don't know what the next big vertical is going to be. And one of the nice things about being in our seat is we don't have to exactly guess that, right? We just try to give people the best user experience. So what I think Arbitrum is missing from that perspective is, to be honest, it goes back to what I said before. Like, we are EVM equivalent today. We are the same as the EVM experience. We've done that by building the technology out fully, and we're extremely proud of that. But then the question is, how can the EVM experience become more welcoming to users, right? How can we, again, not replace that? That will always be there for anyone who wants it, but how can we supplement that? And that might be for developers and for users, because to be honest, like, there still is a barrier to entry to use these systems, right? Like setting up your wallet, to some people that's just hard, like switching networks, buying tokens, buying ETH to pay gas in, and to a lot of people this is just not natural and hard. And again, if you've been in the space for 1 or 2 or 3 years, this might just be like second nature to you. But if our goals are to expand to literally billions of users, and we're going to have to make the user experience, user onboarding, I think, even better and much simpler. So that's one thing which we're focusing on a lot, which is how can we supplement this experience by making it better for users, better for developers. Again, just to stress, not at the expense of what we have today, but in a way that's just additive and supplemental. And I think that's going to be very important for us to really build this out. So that's one thing which I'd say. And the other thing is on the application level, we're seeing a tremendous amount of DeFi adoption, and we're excited about it. But again, we are always welcoming and not complacent, and it's not clicky. Come join Arbitrum. It doesn't matter, that we have a great community. We want more, and that's how we grow. Our community is desperate for more and new friends. So, and that's why we're so excited to have Trader Joe come on board, and excited for your unique flavor on Arbitrum, and excited that you'll have your place. And again, our communities will join. I think that will be a fantastic experience for your community members, for our community members, and for our joint community members going forward. That's one thing we're excited about. And also, there are other industries like gaming, and even NFTs and Arbitrum, which are a bit earlier on. Like OpenSea only launched an Arbitrum, a few months ago, and I think that there's a lot that will still be built up in the NFT communities and the gaming communities on Nova. So those are definitely, I wouldn't say lacking today, but I would say things that are we're excited to see continue built up, and certainly at an earlier point in the adoption cycle than DeFi is on Arbitrum.
Yeah, so my follow-up question is the L1, L2 space is getting pretty crowded these days. You have Polygon with their big partnerships, Avalanche with their subnets in gaming, Solana's doing very well in NFTs. How do you plan to differentiate Arbitrum among the mix?
Yeah, it's a great question. So first of all, I do think where Arbitrum is differentiated today is it is home of DeFi innovation in a very large way. So, and one thing which I'll stress here as well, which may not have been clear, but hopefully it was, the difference between us and some other chains potentially is, not all chains, some chains do the same thing. We don't ask for or ever like exclusivity or push for that. Like, we're happy for projects to be multi-chain. We think that Arbitrum brings something unique, and we think that those projects are here will experience that and appreciate their Arbitrum deployment, but never, we're always working on the merits, right? And always excited for projects to come and try it out. We believe that the experience itself will be enough to convince them. But I do think that fundamentally, the Ethereum, it's not about really Arbitrum, it's about Ethereum. I'm a very, very big believer in Ethereum security, Ethereum decentralization. And a lot of users that I encounter, when they go to some of those other chains you mentioned, often they're going there not because, again, for the reasons I said before, which is not, the practical reasons, which is not because they don't like Ethereum security and decentralization, right? I don't think I've ever been in a conversation where someone said, I don't want to be on Ethereum. I don't like their values. It's more like I don't want to be in Ethereum because fundamentally, like A, B, or C are not working for me, right? Either the fees are too expensive, or it's too slow, or something else that's practical. And that's what we're here to solve, right? We're here to bring Ethereum to the masses. One thing I sometimes like to call Arbitrum is the retail layer of Ethereum. It's the way that brings Ethereum to people at an affordable price, at a sometimes with an increased or better user experience in terms of the speed or the like. And that's what I'm really excited about. So the thing that I think differentiates us from a bunch of those other chains that you mentioned is we are the only one of those that's an Ethereum layer 2, and that to me, I'm happy. I'm happy not to be in a fight against Ethereum because I think Ethereum has such fundamental advantages, and I'm excited to be a part of that. Again, just to be clear, that's not at the to say this is early on and this is a design space, and there are others that designs to Ethereum that people want to test out and try out. So I'm definitely not trying to throw shade at anyone. This is a design space that we need to explore. I personally believe very strongly in the decentralization and security of Ethereum, but it's not unreasonable for someone to say, hey, why don't we scale by making some changes in the security model or the decentralization model, right? Those aren't the approach that I want to take, but it's not like unreasonable for someone to consider that. So this is not me saying like these other chains are all terrible. Like I think we're excited to share projects with these chains. We're excited to but when you ask about the unique flavor, I think that's important, and particularly, by the way, when it comes to some of the more centralized ones that really compromise and become more centralized. I think that recent events are probably a good reminder that centralization is a bad thing, right? So there are people out there that take recent events and say, "Hey, crypto is dead," or "Crypto is terrible." And actually, it's really the opposite. It's like decentralization is so important. Centralized systems were the failure here, not decentralized systems. And I do think that sometimes people have the mentality of if it ain't broke, like don't fix it, right? So and like there are centralized systems that work, and unfortunately, sometimes it takes a big reminder to remind us, and hopefully these reminders never come, to be honest. Right? But sometimes they come, and it takes a big reminder to say, oh, there actually is, it's not just like empty values. There actually is significant benefits of decentralization, and those are the values that I believe in and I care about. And I do think that Arbitrum being a layer of Ethereum is fundamentally important, but that's definitely an innovative and design space, and others may disagree with that.
A bit of a tough question, but do you think L2s can ever surpass L1 activity?
I couldn't hear. Will ever surpass what?
Do you think L2s can ever surpass L1 activity?
Absolutely. I do. I think that L2s can surpass L1 activity. And I'll tell you, if you look at some of the leaderboards recently, again, every metric is flawed. But if you look at, say, DeFi Llama, Arbitrum is significantly on the rise and has surpassed many layer ones at this point. That's not, and by the way, in various metrics, both in terms of transaction volume, value locked, and another interesting one actually is. So the worst metric, in my opinion, by the way, is TVL, because this is so easily gamified. Because not all transactions are created equally. You can have a transaction that does almost nothing, and you can have a transaction that's like uber complex that does as much work as 1,000 transactions. So the better metric that I like to use is gas per second, or gas per unit time. And remember, Arbitrum and most EVM chains, I think Avalanche is the same, Polygon is the same at this point, but Arbitrum is unique because it does it in a roll-up capacity, has the same gas metering as Ethereum. So you can actually go ahead and say, ignore transactions, say how much gas is this chain using, and that's the real metric, right? Because that's what people are paying for, and that looks, it doesn't care about how they break up this gas into transactions, but it says how much activity are they actually doing using the same gas metering. And there have been times recently where Arbitrum is actually doing more activity. Not in a transaction way, again, because one of the nice things about Arbitrum is you have more complex transactions because they become economically feasible. But in a gas way, where we've been using more gas than Ethereum, actually, which again, we have much more capacity than Ethereum, but that's exciting. And similarly, we're seeing metrics for other layer ones where we're definitely consistently ahead, I should say, in various usage metrics. So I think in many ways we are there today, and I think we're not stopping. And I think all these, we're early on, so the entire pile will grow. All these different ecosystems will likely continue to grow together. But I do think if you look at the landscape today and compared to a year ago or a year and a half ago, we have seen Arbitrum really take its seat among the top layer ones in terms of activity.
Yeah, incredibly bullish. And completely agree with you that TVL is very much a meme metric. Doesn't really mean much. I have one last question, totally unrelated, and then we'll pass it on to audience questions. Who do you think will win the World Cup?
That is an excellent question, and I'm going to share my ultimate naivety here that I don't actually know who's in the World Cup.
Okay, that's fine. We'll pass it on to the audience now.
I'm pretty sure England are going to win the World Cup.
USA.
Just as an FYI.
Oh wait, they're out.
Yeah, USA. Okay, cool. Yeah, let's. We've got a few minutes, so we'll open up the audience.
I've probably alienated half the community now by my honesty there, but so be it. You'll always get honesty from me. So there you go.
All Europeans just baited you. Sorry.
Exactly. I think I'm just blocked. Like I just need blocked. The Twitter space is rapidly. The people are rapidly leaving. No, I'm just kidding.
They came here for your betting picks.
Exactly. Yes, never. That's another thing, and my wife can tell you this more than anyone else. Is yes, never ask me for betting or advice and anything like that, because I will always take the wrong position.
Oh, we're gonna ask you for trading advice, but never mind then.
There you go. Bet on layer 2s. That I'm pretty confident on. Anything else, I'm not sure about.
Cool. Yeah. So we've had a number of people request to come up to stage. I'm going to invite someone with the same NFT as you, Steve, and that's from the Smallverse. Is that right?
Yeah, this is Small Brain. That's correct.
Small Brain. Nice. Okay.
Smallverse
cool.
is like the
Oh right. Yeah. Got it. Cool. So we've got Inessa. Inessa, are you there? Do you have a question? I guess not. Okay, let's. I'll remove you from the stage. I'm bringing up someone else. Crypto Jack. Crypto Jack, do you have a question? Hit and a miss 2 times. Third time lucky. Grandma. Grandma.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Hey, yeah. How's it going?
It's good, thanks. Thanks for bringing up. So question for Stephen. Clearly you're a big brain academic who has been thinking about the space for quite a long time. It's quite clear within crypto that Sybil attacks haven't really been addressed, especially with things like gaming airdrops or even something like with the Arbitrum Odyssey. How do you think this will be best addressed in the future?
It's a great question. Yeah, and definitely we do see a lot of Sybil activity on chains, and fundamentally the answer is like, you can't stop, right? These are open systems. You can't stop people from Sybiling and doing these activities. What you can stop is the incentives for such, right? So, and that's, for example, we've tried to make it clear, and I'll make it clear again today. And one of the reasons why I rate is the Arbitrum Odyssey is an educational experience, and that's what users should expect to receive out of it. Obviously, some may have other hopes, and that's. But I've been very, very clear that all you should expect out of the Odyssey is an educational experience. Again, you can't stop this, but I think you can change the incentives over time, and we're seeing things like this, right? We're seeing things like when Hop Protocol did their airdrop, they had this Sybil contest where you can report Sybils and get some of their tokens. I don't remember the exact details, but I think changing the incentives is important. And by the way, I think the reason why it's a problem is because often it raises the value or the price to use these systems for users that are just trying to use them, right? If so it's 2 answers. One is, or it's 3 answers. Number one is we can't stop this activity, and we shouldn't stop this activity, right? We shouldn't try to have some censorship on Sybils, right? You should be allowed to Sybil if you want. what we should do is make sure that the economics of the system don't line up with or don't incentivize this behavior. So those that are doing these sorts of activities like hot protocols, airdrop should try not to reward this. So eventually, people get the idea over time that it doesn't pay off to do this for those reasons. And I think that that's fundamentally important, which is changing the incentives. And the third thing I'll say is, it speaks to a lot of sustainability in crypto. Sustainability in crypto, I'll say generally, which is, if there's a point where people think that by doing these transactions, by spending a few cents, they're gonna like somehow game the system and win big, we have a problem, right? And the problem is that the economics of the system aren't working, and maybe it means and users are losing. So again, similar to what I said before, with the Hop airdrop, but generally throughout the system, we should be saying, are these sustainable? And one thing that you'll get in Arbitrum, and I don't know if this is the case in all ecosystems, but I haven't done deep research on this, is the fees will always be sustainable, right? And what I mean by sustainable is you will be paying for the cost of your operations that you're doing. So you'll be paying for the data costs, you'll be paying for the layer 2 costs, and we want to get that low, but never at a point of subsidizing, right? So if you're in a different industry, say we were in like the retail industry or Amazon and like diapers.com like years ago, where it makes sense sometimes to underprice and actually take a loss to sort of cover the industry. That's never a strategy we'll use, because what we're selling is sustainability. We're trying to sell actual scalability, and that's never ever will we intentionally price our resources lower than the cost to sort of gain market share. And I think that's one important thing, right? If you have ecosystems though that are subsidizing and doing this, then the cost of Sybil might just be free, might just be nothing. And that's part of the reasons why these are unsustainable. So I think sustainability here, both for those that are designing the base systems and the fee model, making sure the users are actually paying for what they're doing, so there's no like free way to do this, but also on those that are designing the systems that might be incentivizing these people, be it an airdrop or something else. I think you need to make sure that the incentives aren't there. And over time, I imagine if that's the case, this will largely go away, because people will get the message that it doesn't pay off to use these bots. You're paying the real cost of doing these transactions, and you likely won't recover it. But I certainly don't think we could do anything in a centralized way, because we definitely don't want to censor anyone. And it might be annoying to us, but there's nothing inherently wrong about someone creating multiple accounts, and that is a usage pattern that someone should be allowed to do if they want to. We just shouldn't reward it.
Yeah, great question, Grandma. And so, just conscious of time, we've got one more speaker up here who's got a question. Mario?
Hey, so I'm a big fan of Arbitrum, but a lot of FUD that I hear about Arbitrum is the fact that it's a quote-unquote centralized shit chain. So, like, what are the plans going forward to decentralize the sequencer?
Thanks for the question. Yeah, I would. I don't know where you're getting that from, but let me I guess speak to it a little bit and try to clear up any misconceptions. So Arbitrum is the only rollup today that actually has live fraud proofs. And actually built fraud proofs. No one else actually has this technology built out. There are many that say have an IOU and say we will build this out eventually. So, and not only that, but we're in beta today, which means that not everyone in the world can launch a fraud proof. But if you follow us on on Twitter or on Discord, you'll see that a few weeks ago we announced a large set of validators, including like very large organizations, decentralized Web2 organizations, etc., that are now validating the chain. So certainly, where Off-Chain Lab is one in a sea of many at this point. So certainly, Arbitrum is the most decentralized rollup that exists today, and the only one built out in rollup technology. You mentioned the sequencer, decentralize the sequencer, and I can talk to this. So let me give a history of the work to decentralize the sequencer. This is actually work that I did at Cornell Tech. Initially, I mentioned that I was co-author on the Flash Boys paper where we defined the MEV problem, and then there was a follow-up paper led by Himna Kelkar and others with Harry Jules, where we discussed how to build a sort of decentralized consensus mechanism that allows for fair ordering. And that's going to be the basis of decentralizing our sequencer. And it's actually well underway, and there's been a lot of follow-up work both internally and externally there. But the big misconception here, which I know I'm happy to clear up, is the sequencer has extraordinarily limited capabilities. And let me walk you through that. The sequencer can't censor transactions, right? It has priority of ordering, but users can put their transactions directly on layer one. The sequencer has to include those transactions. The sequencer certainly can't push a bad transaction in, because remember, there's a sequencer and the validators, and we have a dozen plus external parties validating at this point, and we'll soon open it up to many more. So the sequencer can't pull out, put a bad transaction in, right? The sequencer, those will be caught by the validators, and the sequencer will not be able to do that. The sequencer certainly can't move money from my account to your account, right? That means moving a transaction. So what does a centralized sequencer do, right? What does it mean to have a centralized sequencer? Because it sounds from your question that you have, pretty serious misconception on that point. And what I'll tell you, what the sequencer can do is it can order transactions, right? It can say, this is the ordering of transactions, but again, it cannot censor transactions. And of course, by the way, ordering transaction is important. Again, I was on the initial paper of the FlashBoys paper, and I am, extremely well aware of and involved in the research that led to our understanding of this. And it's a big problem to be able to reorder transactions. The Arbitrum sequencer today does not reorder transactions, and when we move to this decentralized protocol, you'll have a guarantee. But again, the sequencer actually can't even, this is something that differentiates Arbitrum from some of our competitors as well. The sequencer isn't even trusted to know the price of layer one gas. Remember, the sequencer charges users gas costs. It has to know, so what is the gas price on layer one? Because remember, we pay gas to layer one for every transaction. So we need to know what to charge users on layer two. So you might think, let's let the sequencer tell us what the gas price is. That's a sensible design. But our sequencer, even today, is so minimally trusted that it can't actually tell you the price. We only get that directly from layer one. It doesn't. The sequencer is not trusted to tell us the layer one price, because again, a malicious sequencer could raise the price and wreak havoc on the chain and collect more fees than it should. So that's some context. And so again, not to say that the ability to reorder transactions is a good thing, but the sequencer today fundamentally doesn't reorder transactions. And the worst case is that you're similar to systems with block proposers that can reorder transactions, right? And any other system, that's Ethereum, that's any other system that has blocks, those who produce the blocks, there is no fairness in ordering. They can reorder transactions over shorter time intervals, but they can reorder transactions. So that's all the sequencer can do. And so putting that in context, I think Arbitrum is actually the most decentralized solution that exists on the market today. Again, I appreciate your question, but hopefully this clarified things.
Thank you for answering my question. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Yeah, really, really great response there, Stephen. Perhaps a tough question. I know Arbitrum is, placing a decentralized mission at its heart of, continued sort of progression and developing out the ecosystem and the scaling solution that it offers. I think we're up against time now, so I don't want to keep you here too much longer, Stephen. So maybe we'll just wrap up here.
Sounds great. Yeah, thank you so much for having me today, and to you and everyone here and everyone who asked a question. It's really, really a pleasure to be here, and excited to this is the beginning of our work together. So very excited for many more opportunities to engage with the Trader Joe community.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in today to listen. This Spaces is recorded, and we'll do a wrap up as well of all the great insights that's been shared from our speakers. And Stephen, once again, thank you so much for sharing such information and insight into Arbitrum. I know a lot of Trader Joe community listeners here today would have found that incredibly informative. So super excited to kind of roll through the next few weeks as we approach the liquidity book deployment on the chain, and we're looking forward to further collaboration in the coming weeks or so. So once again, thank you everyone who's listened today, and we'll see you next time.